Hey everyone, welcome to the Your Enneagram Friend podcast, where I have engaging and thought-provoking conversations with my friends about the Enneagram. I'm Wendy Busby, your very own life and relationship coach, here to inspire you to know yourself better. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it so much. Today on the show, I am so excited to have my friend Hans. He's a type 4 like me, so this is sure to be an interesting and deep conversation. Hey Hans.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be talking to you about all things four.
Yes, I love it. So let's get into it. Tell me a little bit about who is Hans, a little bit about your background, maybe where you're from and what you do.
Okay, yeah. As you may gather from my accent, I'm German, but I have been living in the UK, in London, for the last 25 years. Just didn't manage to get rid of my accent, unfortunately. I started my career as a lawyer for a big city firm and then in a bank until I had kind of a burnout that made me reevaluate my life and connect to what I really want. And there's a link to my type 4 journey as well. And I started, retrained to be a coach. And I now am a career life executive coach, helping people be more effective in living the life that they want, whether that's in their professional or personal life.
I love that. That's so great. I knew that you lived in London and I knew that you were from Germany, but I didn't know that you have lived in London that long.
Yeah, it's a very long time. It's now
Yeah.
more half than my life. Yeah.
So what do you love most about living in London?
It's just a very cosmopolitan place. Germany seems provincial in comparison to it. There is so much history, trade, nightlife, and whatever you like, it will come to London. Whether it is in particular Enneagram teacher or a pop artist, you just need to wait. It will pass through London at one point, and I love that.
That's cool. Yes, I just want to interject. So Hans and I met online we both were doing the CP professional Enneagram certification and just kind of interacted in some of the online work that we were doing in relation to that. And you were always, whenever you came up to speak or whatever, you were always just so vibrant and always had such great questions. So did you do your in-person retreats and stuff? Did you do the ones that they bring to London?
Yes, I did all of them. I think there are about 5.
Yes.
And I did them all in London. And I'm so grateful that I could do it in London because, it's quite an effort to go to the US for that. There's a cost to it. And I'd rather spend my holidays on proper holidays. So it was great to do all of this in London.
Yeah, that's really cool. I have only done 2. I've not been able to get into the 3rd one. It keeps filling up too fast.
Oh, I mean, they're amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am kind of keeping my eyes open. If they open up another one in London next year, I might jump on that one. So if I do, we'll have to go out and grab a bite to eat or something.
Please, yes.
I would love that. Okay, so let's jump into the Enneagram. When did you first learn about the Enneagram?
That was about 10 years ago. I went to a coach training in California by a guy called Rich Litvin, who does events for coaches to help them on the business side.
Okay.
And he talked about the Enneagram and that he was a type 3. And there were lots of other people there, actually lots of type 3s. And I just got curious what that was. And when I went home or to my hotel room, I Googled it, found out about it, and just took a test. I was very lucky that I got to Integrative 9 immediately. They do just beautiful tests and very high accuracy rate. And when I read my report, although I was mistyped, and we'll probably get to this later, I was just amazed by the depth of information. And I was already a coach, and I could see how it would have both application for my own personal growth and support my my clients, because there's just a wealth of material that you can unravel in a coaching conversation. So I decided I really need to learn this. I need to understand this. And that's when I got my first certification with Integrative 9. Then I did their level 2, which is applying it to teams. And then I did all the CP Enneagram, self-mastery, and the professional certification, which goes even much deeper. And there's still more to discover.
I know. It never quits to reveal itself in new ways.
That's right.
Never
Yeah.
ceases to reveal itself, I should say. Yeah, that's so true what you say about it being so rich,
Mhm.
right? That is so beautifully said. I would say that that's a similar experience to me when I first discovered it. It was like, wow, what is this? I have to learn what this is about, and understanding more about type 4 now, and this deep need for understanding, right? Not only being understood by others, but I think we have a deep need to understand ourselves, and that the Enneagram is a beautiful tool that gives that deep, rich kind of understanding. And I felt so much freer to be okay, I guess would be a good way to say it, from just even learning the surfacey things about the Enneagram without
Yes.
going too deep. Okay, so you alluded to, and I said that you're a type 4. So what was your initial reaction? Well, first tell me, what were you mistyped as?
Type 1.
Okay.
And for a few years, I thought I was a type 1. And type 1s often get confused with the self-preservation type 4.
Yes.
Each type has 3 subtypes, and there's always one which is called the counter type, as you know, that goes against the normal pattern and can look quite different. And when I read the type 1 report, actually everything resonated. Wanting to be perfect, trying to avoid criticism, the frustration, not feeling good enough. And these are things that the type 4 shares with the 1. It just comes from a different place. And I have actually up to date no test that tested me as a type 4. I got this manually from Beatrice Chestnut. What these tests can't really measure is if you have interjected another type, which was the case in my case. Type 4 is something interjection, which is copying a personality from somebody else. My father was a type 1, a judge. There was lots of judging. And I was a very melancholic type 4 child until I shape-shifted into what society expects me to be. And when I was, when Beatrice Chestnut around your pies offered me that I might be a 4, that was initially really hard, but then also a relief, realizing this type 1 fascist that I have been suffering from isn't me. It's my father.
Yes.
And I can let go of this now and pay some attention to this type 4 boy who has been neglected for far too long and needs some attention now.
Oh gosh, Hans, I mean, that's such a beautiful story. Like, I know beautiful might not be the best word for that, but that's what came to mind. The how 4s introject, right? And that's kind of a graduated concept. So do you want to briefly just explain what you mean by introject?
Yeah, I mean, all type 4s have this kind of pattern that is a little bit like a Hoover. I see something and I bring that back to me. Like, I see suffering, I need to have the suffering. I need something beautiful, I want that. And that can be quite an overload. And in particular for the counter type, the self-preservation type, there is a pattern of, I don't really think I'm a 4. I'm different. Look, I'm the good boy or girl. Look how strong I am. I don't make a fuss about myself.
Yeah.
Type fours are regarded as overly emotional, while the self-preservation four takes almost pride in, I'm not like this. I can hold it all together. I'm so strong. I don't really make a fuss about myself. It gets a little bit masochistic, this holding on. And that made it so difficult for me to see that I'm a type four. Indeed, I mean, this is kind of a funny aspect of it. When I was already teaching or helping my clients with the Enneagram, and I was admittedly at the beginning, I always said the politically correct thing about the types, that all types are equal, none is better or worse than the others. But in my mind, I always thought, well, except for the fours, they're a little bit weird and I can't really resonate. It was just so masked by my subtype. And when I had this coming out, no, actually, you are a type four. And then I went back looking at my life through the new lens. I understood that everything that I kind of a little bit judged in type fours, I do all of this myself. It was just better hidden.
Yes. And that's true for all types, right? When people come to realize what their type is, they're often like, oh no, this is, I don't want this. This is not good. Right. And so I could see how, like, maybe you didn't type one, maybe you didn't like that a lot, but you're like, okay, I can do this. Right.
Yeah. Didn't
Yeah.
sound too
I
bad.
can do this. Right. So, but then when four revealed itself to you, it then highlights kind of some of those deeper, darker things that are going on. And it's like, ooh, yeah, okay. I guess I have to own that and be honest with myself that that's true for me so that I can move forward. Right. And that's why accurate typing is so important.
Yes, accurate typing, and then really understanding it beyond the superficial type descriptions that we sometimes read. Because although we want to acknowledge the positives, we don't really want for people to fall too much in love with their personality. Like, oh,
Right.
look how creative I am, or type 7, look how visionary I am. If we're at that level, we don't really understand the shadow sides. And if we want to
Yeah.
grow, we need to understand this. And if it feels uncomfortable, then we're really on the spot.
Yes, headed in the right direction. Okay, so you've already alluded to the self-preservation for being the counter type. Can you, just for the sake of our listeners, so that we can give them a greater understanding of really what we're talking about here, can you also tell us about the social four and the sexual four, or one-to-one can be called that
Yeah.
sometimes?
Well, maybe to take one step back. So the self-preservation type is one that tends to withdraw very quickly. If I don't get what I want, I go back into my cave and I suffer on my own. I hold it all on, and I'm kind of proud that I'm independent. I'm saying that because the other types are quite different. If you have the social type, the social for actually wants to be seen with their suffering, maybe not in a professional context, but otherwise, because they are, as in the name social, their survival instinct is, I need to connect to the tribe and I need to establish myself in the tribe. They also want to be seen and accepted with their suffering by their tribe. I have one very close social four friend, and he often tells me things like, oh yeah, and I talked to Peter and he told me he could really see how bad I am feeling. And there was almost a little bit of pride and satisfaction that the other person could acknowledge it. And so they're engaging with the suffering more openly and sometimes make it a little bit bigger than it needs to be. And then we have the sexual, or some schools call it one-to-one. That is a type that is more active in pursuing to get what they want. All type fours think something is missing, and the sexual one goes out there to attract and compete and fight for what they want. and they have a particular way of dealing with the suffering that all type fours experience, and that is to turn it into anger, because anger just feels easier to endure than suffering. And the
Mhm.
anger is often directed at other people, so they can be quite feisty in relationships. And I recently heard a podcast by a sexual four, and it was quite moving how honest she was. She said, well, it can be so overwhelming, this desire to assert myself and to compete, that it's almost like I want to hurt the other person, even if it's somebody I love. And that's obviously just a moment in the heat, and then it goes away. But it's a very different energy of what the type four, that the self-preservation four has, which is more, okay, I don't have what I want, so I withdraw. I don't stay in conflict as long.
Right. Yeah,
How
that's
about
it.
that for you? Would that resonate with how you experience it?
Yeah, that's very much so. I definitely withdraw if I'm feeling anything, because I don't want others to suffer on my behalf, right? So
Mm,
there's this way of like, well, I don't want you to suffer, so I'm going to hide my suffering. I don't
yeah,
want to burden you with my suffering, so I'm going to hide it, right? And to go back to that, family of origin dynamic um, of the message was, strong emotions are not welcome. Like no emotions, like not even real happiness was welcome. So I learned how to hide all kinds of emotions, even what we would label positive emotions. And so I became very stoic and just very strong, right? And it's like people, when I was growing up, people would describe me as, oh, you're so easy. You're so easy. It doesn't seem like you need very much. And inside, I'm just like, oh my gosh, if you only like knew how much I need to connect. I need relationship. I need someone to come and tell me that I'm worthy and that I'm okay and that, you know, my life matters. And so it's a big withdrawal
yeah.
in the self-preservation. So what's interesting, Hans, is that about 6 months ago, so one of my children, he just turned 22. We discovered that he's a sexual four.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so I mean, when I first learned about the Enneagram, I thought, oh gosh, he must be an eight. Right. And so that sexual four and eight can get
Yeah,
it's a big
yeah.
mistype, just because of the anger and sort of this kind of
Mm,
strength of presence, right? So there's this kind of big strength of presence. And the more that I get to know other sexual fours, they have a strong presence about them.
yeah,
And so that's been kind of interesting. But it's as he's starting to kind of navigate adulthood and navigate work life, he often gets really frustrated with the people he's working with. And he's like, they're all stupid. Like, what's wrong with them?
mm,
And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, that is, the superiority complex that often comes with that sexual four. And then there's lots of anger, right? Lots of anger at the how things are not how he wants them to be. And so it's been interesting, and I'm so grateful to have this language of the Enneagram to understand what's happening with the people I care about in a deeper, richer, more profound way.
and I wish I've had that knowledge when I was a young man, a mother
Right?
who could introduce me to this. Because if we don't have the knowledge that the Enneagram gives us, and obviously there are other models also that can give us something similar, it's almost like things happen to us and we don't understand it. And the Enneagram helped me. Well, it's not quite that since that's happened to me, I have a part in that. The narrative that I create, the push and pull of the four. There are lots of things that I wish I had understood early in life.
Yeah. So, what about your own deficiency story, right? So, the deficiency narrative of the four. What does that sound like for you if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I mean, of
I'm
course,
sorry, I hadn't posed that question to you before, so if you don't want to answer, it's okay.
well, I mean, obviously, I'm four, and I'm also an SP4, so masochistic, so I can totally lean in this. But it is very uncomfortable for fours because we also have the kind of shame. We
Yes.
want to be seen, but we are also in a way too ashamed to be really seen for who
Yes.
we are. It's this kind of paradox. So how the deficiency is basically there is a constant radar looking outside of me for things that I think I should have or be, whether it is people who are more attractive or who are more successful, who have better relationships. And the thing with the four is it's one thing to acknowledge that they have something that we don't have, but we make it very personal. The fact that somebody else has more success is a statement about myself, which is not, which of course not true, but that's the really harsh distortion that type fours do. So because I don't have that, no, I don't have that because there's something wrong with me. And this goes back to my childhood. I even as a 7-year-old boy already thought I was overweight.
Mm.
I've got this picture of me and a boy who I admired as being the old and really grown up boy, and they were both in speedos next to each other. And in those days, I felt so fat against him, and he's so much more muscled. When I now look at the picture, I can't actually see the difference.
Oh,
It's that kind
yeah.
of distortion that we create and that we suffer from all life, and it's really hard not to do, like any Enneagram
Yes.
pattern. The
Yeah.
ego thinks, no, we need to continue to do this. And the type 4 ego does it because it believes the only way to get what you really want is to keep craving, keep looking, keep
Mhm.
comparing, keep putting you down so that you put in the extra effort to eventually get there. And it's
Yes.
a very cruel game, which of course doesn't give us the life experience we really want.
Yes, it is a cruel game. And it's like we never reach our own standards because as soon as we start to reach the standard, we're like, oh, we got to raise the bar higher to keep working so hard to reach the thing that we think will make us better, but it never is satisfying. There's like the way Russ Hudson says the four has chronic disappointment. Have you heard him say that? It's like chronic
Yeah.
disappointment syndrome where nothing is ever good enough, including ourselves, mostly ourselves.
And you see here again, there's a parallel to the type 1, which made
Yes.
me think I'm a type 1, but it's a little bit different. For the type 1, it's indeed, yeah, it could have been better. For
Mhm.
the type 4, it's a little bit different. I devalue what I have. I want this thing, then I have it, and then, oh, but is that really it? No, I think it's that thing externally
Yeah.
again. So it's not even about I want it to be even better. It's about no, actually, I devalue it. And that's so cruel. And one of the type 4 practices that I'm cultivating to embrace is being more grateful for what is.
Yeah.
And so it's about shifting the focus away from that external thing to all the beautiful things that are in my life.
Yes. Gratitude is such a powerful practice for type fours. Like it's one that should be done constantly. But
Yeah.
somehow every time I say that I'm going to do that and I'll do it for a while and then I'll forget. I'll forget I'm supposed to be grateful for all the good things because they sometimes seem so hard to find.
Mhm.
The good things of my life, the good things about me, they seem hard to locate at times. And
Yeah.
I don't think that people understand that how much effort that takes for a four, especially, well, for all fours to like identify what is good about them, but then to own it, right? It's like the good parts get put into the shadow. I'm sure you've heard. Uranio say that before. And it's like, oh, let the shadow, those good elements that you've pushed away, come forward, because that's where the beauty of who you are is.
Yeah, what plays into that is this kind of desire to be special, which took me ages to really acknowledge. I didn't really think I wanted to be special, but I can see it now. And the reason why I say that plays in is everything that we have, there's kind of a hedonistic adjustment. It is no longer special. Like if I have this dream house, after a while, it is no longer special. So there is this constant, okay, I need to look for something else that gives me that special thing.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. Okay, so I want to go backwards and ask you this question again. What was your initial reaction to learning that you were a type 4? Just if you can think back, like, oh, I've thought I was a 1 all this time. I've been presented with the fact that I'm type 4. What was your initial thought, or feeling that you can remember, if you can remember?
It was no. I was very defensive because, as I said, I didn't really like type fours, or I did found it them difficult. And also, I was already using the Enneagram, and I thought, oh my God, I can't be mistyped. I'm an Enneagram practitioner.
Oh.
And that made me, this kind of shame thing kicked in. Oh my God. And I didn't even get my own type right. Which in the end, none of my clients really cared about it. I wasn't quite as important as I thought in that moment.
Right.
So there was this kind of almost panicking. No, this can't be true. But I mean, they were uranium bear trees, and I really value them and respect them. So I sat down in the evening. They told me, think about who you were as a child before you got this kind of professional layer that may have distorted it. And I remember that even as a child, I was already quite melancholic. I remember all the diaries that are written in overly dramatic, long passages of cursing love and everything.
Right.
Some ridiculous things I've done, like singing a love song outside a girl's window with a guitar, completely over the top, or spending my nights sitting in the harbor in a dramatic position in Hamburg, my hometown, listening to Wagner music, writing my diary. Everything was very emotional. I wrote a novel as a teenager and several short stories. But here is something, and what then happened is nobody really wanted to see that. And I remember this one moment where I had this novel, and that was before computers. Everything was typed done with a typewriter, 300 pages, narrow writing, and correcting really difficult. I spent months on it, and I presented it to my parents, and was so scared of showing it to them. My father only read the first page and corrected a grammar mistake, and my mother never read it.
Oh.
So for type 4, not to be seen was that, because it meant a lot for me as a teenager. That was quite a big thing, and I never appreciated this. And I also never appreciated how unusual it is actually for parents that they didn't have the slightest interest in reading what their child created. I mean, it's such a bizarre thing if you think about it. But for me, it was just normal. And then I had another try submitting short stories to a magazine, and I was rejected. And I decided, okay, I close all of this. And I did the sensible thing, become a lawyer. And that's when all of this kind of got forgotten, and I became this type 1 version.
Oh, wow. That's such an interesting story and insight into the child part of being 4, right? This need to be seen, and this need to have this positive mirroring of like, oh, you look at all these good things about you. You're special, you're creative. Like, that's what children need, right? To have like a positive self image of themselves. And when you're not receiving that, I don't think that people understand how damaging that is to a four, especially. I have a similar experience growing up. I didn't have anyone interested in knowing me really. I was
Mm.
cared for, right? I had food and clothing and shelter, and I had, you know, basic necessities met, but there was no emotional care. There was no nurturing. And my biological father left when I was 2 years old. I,
Mm.
with no, throughout my whole life up to now, no explanation of why. And so I internalized that like there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
If the person who is put on this earth that's supposed to love you, your parents, right, doesn't even want me, what's wrong with me? I'm unlovable, like to my core, right? I really, really, really felt that and carried that with me until I started therapy about 8 years ago now.
Mm.
But I really thought like, wow, I am not worthy of love because
Yes.
of this experience, right? And so then my mother was unable to nurture, right? She just didn't have that. And she did her best, right? She did what she knew. But my little four part, my little fourness, like needed someone to say, you're special. And I didn't have that.
Yeah, that's
I hear you when you say like my mom and dad didn't, like I worked so hard on this book. I efforted over it so hard and they didn't care.
and I think they just thought, well, I'm very self-sufficient.
Right.
Like you said, that other people just assume you're fine, and they probably say, oh, he always plays alone in his bedroom. He doesn't really need much.
Yep.
And I don't know whether that is true for all fours or counter fours. I probably also don't always make it easy because I'm not always coming forward. I did with the book, but I don't often do it. It's almost like I want people to come to me. Or even now in conversations, I always listen very well, and people love me to listen. And sometimes I would like them to ask something about me, but they
Mhm.
don't because I probably don't show up as much in conversations and asserting myself, and I'm more the passive listener.
Yeah. Yeah, there is this sense of like not asking for what we need. But
Yeah.
there but I wonder like, well, if we didn't have someone inviting us to ask for what we needed, like how much did that impact, this curiosity of like, oh, well, who are you? What do you need? What are you interested in? Let me attune to that, right? As
Yeah.
parents should attune. And so this is kind of a really sad story. But like when I started going to therapy and I kind of had first started to learn about the Enneagram, I started to confront my mother about some things of like, I need some information here. Like, who
Mm.
am I? Where do I come from? What's my story? And she was very resistant to that. And she said to me, I said, I've had these questions, my whole life. And she goes, well, if you wanted to know something, you should have asked. And I said, well, how was I supposed to know that at 4 years old? Right. And then, like you said, we develop these patterns of like
Mm.
for our own kind of safety and well-being. Like, I'm just going to withdraw. I'm going to suffer in silence because that's what makes me feel safe. And the people around me can't handle my strong emotions.
Mm.
So I've got to keep them hidden inside. And, so it's like, even as an adult in trying to invite those conversations, there was resistance. And so the answers never came. And I had to then go through that process of, okay, I'm never going to receive these answers. So then what do I do with that? You know, I don't want it to keep hindering me in the same way it's hindered me up till now, you know?
And maybe for the benefit of the listeners, what we're talking about is very typical for the self-preservation type fours, because the others are much more confident and asserting themselves, asking and sharing.
Right.
It's our, as self-preservation, our particular growth journey not to do this.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and wow, not to suffer in silence, but to really bring ourselves in and ask for the things that we want.
I know. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because for a minute I forgot we have listeners. I was like, I'm just talking to you, and I would go, oh, wait a minute, this is actually. I'm glad you said that. That's hilarious. I'm forgetting my own work here. Okay, so let's lighten things up a little bit. So imagine that you're meeting someone and you're just getting to know them, and you want to tell them that you're a type 4 and you kind of want to describe what that means. How would you introduce yourself, or that this part of yourself as, oh, I'm an Enneagram Type 4, to someone that you're just meeting?
Well, the thing is, as a type 4, I don't do light things.
I
I
know.
go full in with the proper thing. I mean, I would probably say something along the lines that type 4 are one of the 3 heart types, which means that they're very much using the heart and their emotions, and they identify themselves very much with their emotions and over-identify themselves with their emotions. I am what I feel. And they're driven by a desire to be special, and they're out on the look for what is missing and trying to bring those things into their life to make them complete, which ends up in a wild goose chase for that unattainable thing that they think, if I only had that thing, then I would be okay.
Right.
And I would probably also mention that that they're really interested in deep life experiences. They don't do shallow. They want to have authentic, deep, processing of feelings, deep conversations. There's a value into depth that goes like a thread through their life.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's all true. And it can be really hard, right, to start relationships. Like I have found for myself, because of that, like I've had to pay attention to my intensity
Yeah,
when
totally.
I'm first meeting someone, because it can be really off-putting, and it's like, it's okay to slow down and talk about light things, or things that don't seem like they're all that important, but to build trust and to build, some rhythm in the relationship, and then kind of slowly enter into the depths. And like the people that I want to get to know deeper, like I'll say, like, this is something that's really important to me, is having deep conversations and really talking about things that I find meaningful. And what I have found is that some people are able to do that and some people are just not. And that's okay. And so I've learned kind of how to categorize some relationships of like, oh, this
Yeah.
relationship, I want to have a relationship with this person. But in order to do that, I have to be okay with that this relationship's going to be on the surface. And that's okay, because I really like this person. And then to invest in those relationships that do allow for that deeper connection. Whereas before I would have been like, oh, I'm not going to spend any time with that person because they don't actually really care enough to get to know me. Like that was the story I would tell myself. Like if they cared enough to get to know me, they would want to go deeper. And what I have found is that some people, that's just not for them. And that's 100% okay.
And maybe we can even go a step further. That's exactly what we need. as fours,
Yes.
because sometimes we need the counterpiece that keeps it a little bit light,
Yes.
as opposed to collude with us in the
Collude.
depth.
That's a great word.
So a good counterpiece for type 4 is a type 7.
Yes. I know. And I've said so many times, like, I love sevens. If I could be a seven, I wish I could, but they have their own stuff too, right? Every
Absolutely,
type
yeah.
has their stuff. And
Absolutely.
yeah, but embracing lightness, not having to be so serious all the time, it's such a good practice. But it's hard. I find that really hard to do.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So another big aspect about type fours, and I would say like it's maybe the biggest, is feeling understood, wanting to feel understood. So, what happens when you feel misunderstood? Could you talk a little bit about this um, part of fours needing to be understood? Kind of what happens when they feel misunderstood, and how that is for you.
Yeah, this is again subtype specific. As a
Mhm.
self-preservation for, it is withdrawing, and that can happen very quickly. Not even sometimes giving people enough chance. It's this immediate first sense, no, I'm not being heard, I'm not being seen. It's very easy for me to disconnect too quickly if I don't manage that. I'm getting better at stopping myself. Um, because it feels safer not to even try, not to expose myself to a relationship where I'm not seen or where my values aren't shared.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a preemptive strike of withdrawing quickly.
Mhm. And do you experience, because for me, I often experience trying to over explain in the pursuit of being understood. Does that happen with you?
I have to think about that. I'm not quite sure. I mean, sometimes it's not quite the same, but sometimes something really silly that I find difficult is, let's say you and I go to see a musical. And for me, it's really deep and psychological. And you just say, oh, this was a nice spectacle. That I would really think, oh my God, and this is all you that you say, and you don't really get all these layers of depth. And then I might try to explain a lot, which can be a little bit for the other person, oh,
Mhm.
sorry.
Mhm.
um, when it comes to myself, I don't think I explain that much.
Okay. Yeah. And I now that you're saying it, I find that I do that only in like my most intimate relationships, right?
Right.
Like with my husband, right? If I feel misunderstood by him, I will keep trying to explain to get to the place of being understood. I wonder, what is your instinctual sequence?
Sexual is the last.
Oh, okay. So that's switch. So social is
Uh-huh.
last for me. So I wonder if there's any um, influence from that.
Well, what I'm curious
Yeah.
about is when you say I explain a lot, that could be understood in two ways.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, Either that is in type 4 personality, or actually, no, that's a good thing for a self preservation, for that
Mhm.
you stay in that conversation and that you do articulate your perspective or your feelings.
Yeah, perhaps. And because I would say that that's probably a newer, if I think back to previous, where misunderstanding happened, I probably did withdraw more. And now it's more like, okay, let's try to get to a place of understanding. It can just sometimes feel really hard to get to the place where I feel understood sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for making that point. Um, well, we are kind of like getting towards the end of our time together. I don't want to keep you too long.
That was quick.
And I know it went so fast,
Mm.
right? So you've talked a little bit about how you use the Enneagram professionally. Can you say a little bit more about that, and how, if someone's interested in learning more about you as a coach and what you do professionally
Yeah.
and how they can find you.
I have two sides of my coaching business. One is specifically about Enneagram for people who love the Enneagram and want to do deep growth work. And for that, I have an Enneagram on my website, enneagramgrowthjourneys.com. And then I have a more generic life coaching, career coaching, executive coaching business under hansschumann.com. And here I work with clients who come to me to work on specific issues like changing career, getting a promotion, becoming a better leader, or improving their work-life balance. But I normally introduce them to the Enneagram through the back door because it helps them understand their DNA, so that they're more effective in creating success in those areas of their life. I'm also attending a one-day Enneagram event in Dublin on the 19th of October, if anybody is there, with other practitioners where we talk about all things Enneagram. And I'm in social media and on YouTube, and you can find all of this on my website.
Great. Yeah. And I'll put all that information in the show notes too for people that want to. So do you only coach people from London?
No, I've got clients all over the world, in South America, in China, in Africa.
Fantastic.
Luckily, that's all now very easy through technology.
I know, right? Like you and I are talking right now.
That's right. Yes.
So awesome. All right. Is there anything else that you would like to say about type 4, being type 4, education about type 4?
Well, maybe if you're in relation with a 4, whether it's a friend or a colleague or a partner, something that is important is don't immediately reframe, talk things up, or offer solutions. Give them a moment to just listen and acknowledge how they feel. And once you've acknowledged that you understood it and you validate their feelings, then they're in a position to maybe talk about, okay, what's another way of looking at it? Or would you like to talk about how we can resolve this? But it doesn't work if you get there too quickly, because you just feel like you're not heard or not seen. I recently had a lunch with a type 7 friend who I really like, but after each sentence, she immediately reframed, trying to make a positive out of it. And for me, that felt a little bit shallow and unsatisfying, and not really me being able to be authentic.
And not you fully being heard.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. That's great advice, because it is so important to let the 4 just feel for a little while before you tell them not to, and well, don't ever tell them not to, right? That's a thing. Like, don't tell a 4 not to feel. There has to be trust there, right? The people that I trust the most, like, I can listen to them say, like, maybe feelings are getting a little too big here, and maybe you could pull that in a little bit. But if someone that I don't know tries to say that same thing, I will really resist it, because then, well, you don't know, like, it hasn't been validated, right? That concept of needing feelings to be validated doesn't mean I need you to feel the same way that I feel. It doesn't mean that I need you to even agree with the way that I feel. I just need you to say that it's okay for me to feel the way that I feel.
Yeah, and not dispute that you have the right to feel that way. You may disagree with the objective thing, but don't dispute my emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like we could just keep going and going and
We
going.
could indeed. Yes. Maybe another time.
I was just going to say, I'd love to do this again sometime. And I'll touch base with you after, so that I can get all those details, so I can put it on for people to learn more about you, or to contact you if they're interested in working with you.
Anytime. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thanks, Hans.